It's a good day to brew, baby. What is up, YouTube? It's Roy Millzy, back with Hometown Commander, and we are back for another episode of Millzy Brews, the show where I bring you my version 1.0 deck list for the commander in question on my quest to outbrew your favorite Magic channel. Today, we have a deck that I have tried once or twice in the past, but could never really find a list that I loved, so I thought, let's come back to it for Millzy Brews. Let's put my final stamp on it for now, and let's rock it. This is the last week of content before we get into March of the Machines, and I'm really excited to finally start brewing around March of the Machines. I'm going to try to brew every partner commander I can, the team ups that I can, minus a few obvious ones, and good to be trying to brew as much March of the Machines content as I can, including some personal brews for myself, and I'm very excited about that. But today, we are doing another Izzet deck because the world is full of good Izzet decks, and that's Galazeth Prismari, 2 blue-red for a 3/4 flying. When it enters the battlefield, we get a treasure. Then artifacts we control have tap, add one of any color. Spend this only to cast an instant or sorcery spell. Well, Galazeth does really two good things. One, it brings this treasure when it comes in, which isn't half bad. But the important thing it does is allows our artifacts to tap to add mana to play spells. And that's where this deck, I think, gets a lot of its strength in making artifacts, whether they're treasure, clues, or creature tokens, lots of different things, tapping them for mana, allowing us to spell sling ourselves to victory. There's a couple ways we can do it, which we'll talk about as we run through the deck. But let's get into it. Here's our mana base, playing pretty standard. Notice we're going pretty low on the land count because honestly, most of our spells are pretty low on the mana curve. We're playing a lot of mana rocks to make up for it. So we're going to end up using treasures for mana anyway. So we're playing a lot of draw effects as well, which I think are going to kind of make up that lack of lands in our deck. Getting into the enchantments, I think this is a pretty great enchantment suite for what Galazeth is trying to do. My favorite combination of cards in the entire world. First off, Arcane Bombardment. This is a spell that I love brewing around in my spell slinging decks. It's a ton of fun. Once you get this thing going, you will wreak absolute havoc on a table if you can take extra turns, which I know are going to offend some people, but if you can get an extra turn spell underneath it as well as anything else, you're just going to have a ton of fun. And you pair that up with Thousand Year Storm, a great spell slinging enchantment in its own right, copying things. The great part of our Arcane Bombardment or Mizzix Mastery, if that's the run that you take, which we have that in the deck as well with Thousand Year Storm, is you are casting all of those. So they still count for all your cast triggers. They still count for all those things, as well as for Thousand Year Storm. They will get copied as well. So love those two together. Mystic Remora and Rhystic Study getting a little bit of draw for us. Shark Typhoon is going to make us some tokens as we're casting these spells. We're getting those tokens. Mechanized Production is a good alternate win con. You put that on one of your treasures. At the beginning of your upkeep, you make a token that's a copy of it. And then if you have 8 or more artifacts with the same name, you win the game. Now, the interesting thing about this is you don't have to put that artifact that you have 8 or more of to win the game doesn't have to be the artifact that Mechanized Production is attached to. So depending on what you choose to put this on, you can put this on a treasure, keep getting a new one every turn that you can tap for mana. You can put this on one of those creatures if you want to keep getting those. But what's cool about Mechanized Production is you can put it on something you really want to get more of, but that 8 or more is not relevant on what you attach to it to win the game. So Mechanized Production is an alternate win con. Metallurgic Summonings is very similar to Shark Typhoon, but it's only for instant or sorceries, whereas Shark Typhoon is for all non-creatures. And this just gets us an XX colors construct artifact creature token, where X is that spell's mana value. Well, this is great because then on future turns, we can tap it for mana. Rain of Riches, since we have treasures laying around and we'll eventually want to use them to cast spells, Rain of Riches is great because it gives that first spell. We use mana from a treasure to cast each turn, having Cascade. That's going to help us hopefully get through our deck, get some more things. And then Trail of Evidence, every time we cast any sorcery, we get a clue. That clue's great because it can be tapped again with Galazeth to make mana. Coming up to our artifacts, Arcane Signet, Izzet Signet, Mox Opal, Soul Ring, Talisman of Creativity for our mana rocks. Isokon Scepter in here with Dramatic Reversal. Since we're tapping so many of our artifacts and things for mana, that combo I think is going to come really well into this deck to give us a bunch of love. Primal Amulet going to reduce our spells, and then once we flip it over, we can get a mana and copy the thing that we cast with it. Unwinding Clock going to untap all of our artifacts during other players' turn. This is great because it allows us to play cards like Spell Swindle and Access Denied to potentially shut our opponents down and get some big benefit. Spell Swindle is probably the better of the two because it gets you those treasures, which which can be used for mana. But in this deck, both are equally great because both of them get us things that can be tapped for mana. And then the Reaver Cleaver, a new card from Dominaria United. We're going to put this on one of our creatures, give it trample whenever it deals creature damage to a creature planeswalker. We get that many treasure tokens. This again just ramps us forward, gives us access to more mana. Here on the instant side of things, we're playing Big Score and Unexpected Windfall for those treasures. We talked about Access Denied and Spell Swindle for some counteraction. Brainstorm the draw, Chaos Warp for some removal, Psych Rift, that big boy removal to have our opponents pick up all their stuff, push ourselves out of the way. Galvanic Iteration is going to copy a spell, and the best part is it can be flashed back right out of our graveyard as well to copy a spell again. Mystical Tutor can get us a lot of things. One of the cool spell combos in the deck, if you have enough mana, is Storm King's Thunder, a card from Commander Legends 2 that I absolutely love. This is when you cast your next instant sorcery spell this turn, copy it X times, you may choose targets for the copies. If you pair Storm King's Thunder with something like Tasha's Hideous Laughter, Karn's Temporal Sundering, or another extra turn spell, if you want to, you'll get a bunch of turns. But I love going with Tasha's because if you can copy Tasha's 6 or 7 times, you're probably going to mill your opponents out. So that's another option for Mystical Tutor to help you kind of push yourself into. Prismari Command, draw, but it can make us a treasure. Reality Shift for some removal. For instance, for our sorceries, All Runs and Time Warp and Karn's Temporal are our extra turn spells. These are kind of the ones that we want to get underneath Arcane Bombardment if possible. I just realized if we cast Karn, it'll exile itself. But if we discard it somehow, we can get it underneath the Arcane Bombardment. We picked normally if I'm going the turns route, I like to bring in things like Temporal Manipulation, or we're about to get that remix. That reprint of Capture of Xing Zhao, which doesn't exile itself after it's cast. So if you want to go that route with Arcane Bombardment, you can bring that in to help you out there. Brass's Bounty is a great thing to get underneath Arcane Bombardment because we're just going to keep getting it every turn. Crack with Power, one of our finishers, is going to make a bunch of damage. Expressive Iteration going to help us draw through the top of our deck, get us those things. Jaya is another thing that's going to go well with all that extra mana we have. It deals some damage to our opponents. Shaika's Will is going to get us that extra mana on the turn that we play it. And if we have Galazeth out, we could flip those top 3 cards. Mana Geyser making us a bunch of red mana. Preordained for the draw. Mizzix Mastery, another way to kind of have fun with all of these spells. If they're all in your graveyard, you can play Mizzix Mastery and go off. Mizzix Mastery also pairs really well with Thousand Year Storm because you're going to copy all of those things because Mizzix Mastery say you cast them for free from exile. Rise and Shine at one of two cards that are going to turn all of our creatures into all of our non-creature artifacts into creatures. Help us end the game that way. We have Rise and Shine, and we have Cyberdrive Awakener. Both are going to do very similar things. Turn all of our clues, treasures, and all those into creatures, and we can swing for the game. Seize the Spoils, another one of these draw and get treasure spell, and that's great. Solve the Equation, can go get another spell to help us out. Tasha's, like I said, and then Time Warp. So you can see we're about to have a little bit of removal, a little bit of pushing ourselves forward, but really we want to start amassing those treasure tokens, amassing those clues, amassing these different things that make us artifact creature tokens, because those tap for mana as well. And then get into these big fiery turns where we have some fun. We're playing 2 Planeswalkers. First, Sahiri Filigree Master. That -2 gets us 2 Thopters. The +1 lets us just scry and tap an untapped artifact you control to draw a card. Well, if it's something if it's like a creature token we made that turn, we don't really care, right? We're just going to tap it and draw a card. We can do this every turn if we have something else out that's making artifact creature tokens, which we have a couple things. And then that -4 artifact creatures you control get +1, +1, and they cost 1 less to cast. Next up, sorry, weird beeping going on in the background. Saheeli Sublime Artificer is probably one of our favorite artifact producers. Whenever we cast a non-creature spell, we get a 1/1 servo artifact creature token. Well, that's great because that taps for everything we want Galazeth to do, and it's a creature, and then that -2 can turn an artifact into something else. That's one of those things where depending on what artifacts we have out, we can take good advantage of it. And try to gain ourselves an advantage. But I think where the deck really shines is in this creature base, trying to take advantage of our spell slinging, take advantage of our treasures, and build ourselves up. On the treasure side, we have Academy Manufacturer, which anytime we do create a food, clue, or treasure, we're going to create all 3 instead. That's great because we have a lot of things that make treasures, and we have a lot of things that make clues. So both of those are going to kind of lead us to get all three, and that's three different things that can tap for mana. And the best part about those is they're artifact tokens, so we can tap them right away with Galazeth for mana. Unlike if we create an artifact creature token, of course we'd have to wait that turn because of the summoning sickness. Ancient Copper Dragon, if we ever connect with it, we're just going to make a ton of treasures. This just gives us a threat in the air. This gives us something to eventually attack, because at the end of the day, we are kind of comboing. We still need to threaten our opponent's amount, and this is another target for something we'll talk about in a second. Dockside, of course, coming in getting us those treasures. Have the combo with Displacer Kitten. If you cast enough spells, you can just go ahead and blink Dockside and make a ton of treasures that can lead you to one of those Crack with Power or Jai's Emulating Inferno victories. Goldspan Dragon going to make us a treasure when it attacks. And then treasures can sacrifice for 2 mana instead of 1. Now we're going to want to tap them anyway, right, with Galazeth, but if we ever need to get rid of them, Goldspan Dragon can do it for 2. Hellkite Tyrant, whenever it comes in or whenever it deals combat damage to a player, we get all artifacts they control, and at the beginning of our upkeep, if we have 20 more artifacts, we win the game. This is going to be very easy with this deck, just due to how many of these treasures we're going to be making. And a couple of these are great targets for Magda, Brazen Outlaw, a card that I hadn't really thought about for Galazeth, but the more that I think about it, the better it is, because she's just going to allow us to sacrifice those treasures to go get these dragons, to go get the Hellkite Tyrant, to go get the Goldspan, to go get the things we need. And then the other one last dragon we're playing is Manaform Hellkite. This was a card I think that fits the spot in this deck well, because it's going to make us tokens we can attack with this turn. If we have one of these massive Arcane Bombardment 1,000-Year Storm turns, we're going to make all these tokens and swing with them and help us end the game. So whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you make an XX red Dragon Illusion creature token with Flying and Haste, where X is the amount of mana cast to spend that spell. I'm now realizing that it's not mana value, which kind of stinks, but I'm sure it's still, I think this is going to still be helpful. I just allowed that token to be in the end step. Now that I'm kind of second guessing myself a little bit on Manaform Hellkite, but that's okay. Like I said, version 1.0 list. This is my first time building the list, really, in reality, in a long time. And these are the changes we find when we do this. And then Stormkill Artist, remember, we cast or copy a spell, we get a treasure. This is going to produce a ton of treasure for us. And this is probably one of the best cards in this deck, especially when you start copying and getting spells on the stack. Love, love, love this card. We're playing a couple cards from the 40k decks, from Abaddon's 40k deck. Exalted Flame Roots in each. At the beginning of our upkeep, return a random instant or sorcery from our graveyard to our hand. That's great, because we can kind of replay those spells. And then whenever you cast it, instant or sorcery deals 1 damage to each opponent. We need a couple of these kind of cards, because if we're going to go on this big spell slinging ramp off here, we need something to end the game. Magnet the Red is going to make our instant sorceries cost less for each creature we control, which is going to be a lot of them, especially with some of these things that make them. So that's great. And then whenever it deals damage, we get a creature token. Gutter Snipe going to deal 2 damage to each opponent anytime we cast an instant or sorcery spell. Well, again, this works great with this idea, what we're setting up, what we're trying to do. Leer going to allow us to cast things back out of our graveyard, which is going to be helpful depending on some of the situations we're coming in. We want to make sure we can get those spells back out of our graveyard. Also stop spells from being countered, because this could potentially get a lot of the things we need through to end the game. Reckless Fireweaver going to deal damage. Whenever an artifact enters the battlefield under your control, it deals 1 damage to each opponent. So every treasure we put in pings our opponents. And that's great, because, again, the more of the Zorns and the Stormkill Artists in that we put down on the board and start casting spells, the more we get those treasures, the more we're picking our opponents for that. Reality Chip can attach to our opponent and let us play, or attach to our commander, allows us to play lands and spells off top of our library, and that's great. Just extends our hand, gets us more options. Third Path Iconoclast, another one of the great creatures that's going to make us artifact creature tokens that would tap for mana. Love this. Almost a strict upgrade over Young Pyromancer, because those are artifacts coming in and not. And then Zorn says if we would create 1 or more treasure tokens, create that many +1 treasure tokens. So that's great, because it's just going to get us more and more. I think there's a lot here to this deck. I think there's a lot of obvious play lines for this deck and kind of win cons and top ends for this deck. My goal here is just to create a shell that if you're interested in Galazeth, you can take and make your own. Let me know what you think of my Galazeth list down in the comments. I'd love to know what are the obvious Galazeth things you think I missed. Again, I think Galazeth varies a lot. This is what I would call a middle tier to higher tier build. I think if you want to go higher up on the power end, not CDH, but as far as regular EDH goes, bring more of those non-exiling extra turn spells in. Bring in some ways to copy some more spells and that kind of thing. And then probably take the Mana Form Hellkite out for some more things that make creature tokens and really go in that route. And I think eventually you'll just end the game by taking enough turns to win the game that way. Or you can take some of that extra turn stuff out, take the Arcane Bombardment out, put in more of the Reckless Fireweaver style effects, and just ping your opponents out that way. I'm not playing all of the electric static fields or even creatures that deal damage when you cast spells. You could bring more of those in and go that route if you want to. I think what's great about this deck is there's so much versatility for you to choose. This is just a list that I kind of liked and that I thought was a middle of the road, kind of ground starting place for most people when it comes to Galazeth, and you can kind of tweak this list to do which one for there. But let me know what you think down in the comments of my Galazeth list. Like if you like the list, subscribe if you want to see me brew more content. Again, March of the Machine is coming. Can't wait to brew around it. And I finally fixed, if you saw the community post last week, finally fixed a lot of the issues that I was having time with brewing decks. Of course, I love being a dad, and I very much enjoyed my time in the first 4 weeks here with a little kiddo, but it has definitely shot myself in the foot on time I have available. But that's okay. I'm learning, I'm adapting, I'm brewing for you guys, and I'm brewing for myself, and I am loving it. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will catch you guys next time.